Rebel Devs Podcast, a show that challenges conventional thinking in the tech industry. Each episode features conversations with solutionists who have taken unconventional approaches to problem solving, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in their respective fields. Join the devolution.
Ladies and gentlemen, rebels and tech enthusiasts, welcome to a special two-part episode of the Rebel Devs Podcast. I'm your host, Tom May, and we're about to embark on an exciting journey through the dynamic landscape of current technology news. In this first installment, we're diving into a collection of engaging outtakes that capture the essence of the ever-evolving world of tech. From the groundbreaking to the bizarre, the Rebel Devs team has scoured the digital universe to bring you the most intriguing stories, insightful analysis, and a few laughs along the way. So get ready to explore the realms of innovation and disruption as we uncover the untamed spirit of tech in part 2 of this special edition of Rebel Devs. But before we dive in, a quick reminder to subscribe and follow us on your favorite podcast platform to catch every episode of the Rebel Devs Podcast. Now, let's jump right into the excitement. Hey everybody, it's Tom and Jonah here on the Rebel Devs Podcast. Tonight we're just going to do outtakes. It's been a while since we spoke to you all, and we've been busy doing all sorts of our geeky stuff, but I think we have some cool topics tonight. Isn't that right, Jonah?
I think we do. There's been a lot going on in tech recently in the last couple weeks, so we've got a bit to catch up on.
Well, tell me about this EU smartphone thing that you found out about, because I love this interesting concept of replaceable batteries, only because the big thing with iPhones when they came out, really in my knowledge, I think they were the first ones that kind of had that self-contained battery, and I remember freaking out going to it, like, how am I going to recharge my battery? So what's this all about?
So we'll see if it comes to the US, but the European Union has now passed legislation that essentially all smartphones produced after 2027 will have to have user replaceable batteries, which means no more pain in the butt adhesives, suction cups, replacements like you have to do today with phones. So there are some phones, I think, even today that actually still offer the waterproofing, but still have like micro SD cards, replaceable batteries, and so on. So I know a lot of companies have said over the years, supposedly they got rid of removable batteries to seal the phones up better for waterproofing. But my understanding is you can still waterproof the phone, but keep the battery removable. So what's nice is, like I said, they'll be user replaceable, hopefully in the next few years. We'll see if companies like Apple pull a separate US versus EU model, but hopefully they just keep them the same across the board.
I would think that they have to come up with some sort of standardized manufacturing. The challenge is going to be when you've looked on the inside of that iPhone, so much of that is battery. But I guess if they just kind of make a bezel that removes, they'd solve their problem. It will be interesting. Do you think this is stemming from the lawsuits against Apple and their battery usage, or is this just something that the EU thinks is in a consumer interest?
It seems like the EU's just on a kick lately to be consumer friendly and give right to repair. I mean, we've got this recent ruling. I think it goes even further and says all portable devices. So I think that includes handheld consoles also. Like we'll probably see future Switches and Steam Decks potentially with usable replaceable batteries. But equally so, there's some more caveats in this legislation from what I understand, where not only do new phones and batteries have to be made with a higher percentage of recycled materials, but the phones themselves will also have to be more recyclable. That way, especially the rare earth minerals like cobalt will be used more and more as phones are turned in to the recycling plants. They'll be recycled, of course, for future models. I think it's something like, depending on the components of the phone and battery, somewhere between starting at 50% has to be recycled and recyclable. And then I think by like 2035, it goes up to even like 80%. But even recently, if you didn't see, I think like maybe 6 months ago now, the EU also made legislation that basically told Apple they're not allowed to use Lightning anymore on the iPhones and they have to switch to USB-C, which Apple said I think they would be doing on either the 15 this year or the 16 next year.
Are they going to go standard in the US on that also, or are they splitting their production lines?
I don't know, because I think US this year was eSIM only on the 14s, but they still had SIM cards in the EU. I want to say whoever at Apple said the next iPhones would have USB-C said it would be all models, but we'll have to see. The other thing I saw is the EU has already issued warnings to Apple basically saying, hey, don't limit USB-C speeds for non-certified cables. If it's USB-C, allow the full transmission speed that the cable's capable of.
Good. And I'm thinking with our power bricks, because those are USB-C on one side and then it's Lightning on the other, that we just have to get a new cable instead of throwing everything away, which was such an annoyance when they had their old connector and they went Lightning. I remember little dongles and adapters, and it was just an absolute nightmare. But I think more people are buying wireless technologies, or even in our vehicles, we have USB cables we just plug in. It's not like back, I remember my first Apple Play radio, I actually had to have the full cable on the back side of the radio, which that was just brutal.
Yeah, it will be nice for me to go down to one less cable. At least when I'm in hotel rooms when I'm traveling, I have a nice little power brick with a flip-up arm that does basically Apple Watch, wireless, AirPod, MagSafe, plus some USB. But at least when I'm traveling, I still have to carry around separate cables. USB-C for like my portable gaming device, Lightning for my headphones and my iPhone, my watch charger for my Apple Watch. So hopefully we'll even see maybe future AirPods go to USB-C, because it would be nice to get everything down to as few cables as possible.
Well, as somebody who just invested in the AirPod Pros Maxes, I'm not sure that I want that change to happen yet, because I love these things and I'm not looking forward to changing out my connectors in there. But it is interesting about USB-C, because I know my secondary screen on my laptop that I carry around uses USB-C, which is great. The other day I went to go jumpstart a lockbox at one of our houses, and I went in there and I was like, oh, it's a USB-C, and I grabbed a cable off of my mouse, because of course that would be USB-C, and it wasn't. It was like one of those micro, or there's multiple of those little things, but it was one of the newer ones. Yeah, I'm just like, can we just be in a USB-C world already? And so hopefully we'll just go there and be done with it. I don't know if we ever need a USB-DE, but they should just leave well enough alone, is my guess.
Yeah.
But
I mean, my understanding is with C, not only do you have the reversible direction, unlike Type A, but like Lightning, but my understanding is, at least for cables with USB-C on both sides, it allows for bi-directional communication, which wasn't possible with USB-A. And there's supposed to be chips on both sides that essentially tell you what protocols the cable supports and what speeds they can run at, as well as chips in the devices to make sure you don't, say, try and throw 100 watts if your cable supports it into, say, a 30-watt device, if it can only take that. But no, I mean, I think most devices use C at this point. I mean, I went from a PlayStation 4 controller to the newest Xbox controller about a year ago. The Xbox controllers use USB-C now. iPads use USB-C now and have for a couple years. MacBooks do it. Most devices, I mean, even my Surface, it still has its Surface connector, but I can charge it off USB-C.
No, I agree. It's time. But enough of the USB-Cs. I think the next little area we were going to jump into was just a cool little bit about security and home cameras and whatnot, because I guess, Jonah, in your neighborhood, it's the 1950s and there's people walking around knocking on doors selling things. And apparently people are buying, but not you. But you were saying that there were some really cool features in this new system. So I think it was a Vivint security system had these features, or what?
Yeah, so they've come to my door a couple days now. I guess some neighbors are getting installed, and I already see 2 or 3 within a few houses from me that have their signs out front advertising they have it. But I guess the big new thing with Vivint is full cellular backup for cameras. So Ring, I know for a couple years has had something like that now, but only partial functionality. So you can still set your alarm status. You can view your status on the cellular backup, but you can't actively view the cameras. And I don't think they store locally or record off the cellular. But supposedly Vivint is now doing full cellular backup, so you can access the cameras remotely. They'll still record to the cloud, because I guess they're saying they're seeing a lot of burglaries where the people are actually going and cutting your internet cable now completely. So they knock out the cameras.
I know I was in T-Mobile, and I always love my Arlo Pro 4s, and I put them everywhere. And I get the ones without the base station because there's such a distance. It never really worked, maybe on the newer ones, but mine go right to the cloud. They record up there, and if you clipped internet, you'd be down. But I know T-Mobile was selling the exact same version, same thing. It was, I think, maybe $10 a month on the plan or something, and voila, it was an Arlo camera with the built-in battery. Well, you can change the batteries in there, but that battery will run 6 months or so, depending on your usage. I think I get about 60 days maybe on mine with hypersensitive, but I put some solar panels up there. The greatest part is, hey, if it loses Wi-Fi, boom, it's right on cell, writing to the cloud, which is perfect. So it's nice to see that people are starting to do this. But I think we start going back to the adage of, if you see the camera, why wouldn't you just go up and knock the camera down and do what you're going to do? So I like to think of what I've heard over the years, or, locks only keep honest people honest. I think those security cameras only keep honest people honest.
Yeah, I mean, I've moved over to Arlo too gradually, except I have the base station because I have small enough coverage plus some Wi-Fi repeaters, so I get decent signal. And I think I've got the Ultra too, so I actually get 4K recording on it. And I think I'm paying for Arlo's subscription too, just because it gives me 4K in the cloud as well. But no, I'm even at the point, like, I'm running pfSense with the home lab and whatnot. My Wi-Fi routers are no longer routers, they're just access points. So I've actually found out just for cheap, like, to keep my systems in place instead of ripping them all out and doing a new one, I can get a cheap little USB LTE dongle, put a SIM card in it, and actually have automatic failover to cellular if my internet ever goes out, which is nice because, of course, I want to watch it because of data limits and throttling after, I think, 50 or 100 gig for what I'm paying for. But, theoretically, if I go down, I can teleconference and whatnot over it too, and I won't notice it if I'm working and it goes down.
Well, it's kind of a nice segue in. I know that we were talking about cell phones, and I'm still on my diehard AT&T, one of the original iPhone owners back in the day when it was AT&T and AT&T only. The world opened up, and I kind of liked my internet. I was a Verizon guy forever from New York, and moving to Texas, those iPhones came out, and I was like, well, I'm going to switch to the dark side. And AT&T was wonderful for me. And my wife was always a Sprint customer, and she loved customer service with Sprint, but the coverage was so weak. And we ended up combining accounts when we got married, became AT&T subscribers, and our iPhones were happy, and we never looked back. But slowly, T-Mobile's been creeping up and creeping up and creeping up, really building a great network in here. And I've been watching them, looking at some of their fees and stuff. And then you hit me yesterday with Google Fi. So what's this whole Google Fi thing? Because this sounded so awesome to me, really, for, I think, those add-on SIM cards like you're using for your pfSense. So what's this all about over there?
Right. So apparently Google has Google Fi. I think it's been around 5 or 6 years now. My understanding is most carriers that you find that are the prepaid budget carriers like Mint, well, I can't say Mint now because I think T-Mobile just bought them. And it's going to be changing, but Visible, Cricket, some of those. My understanding is there's something like 7 different priorities on cellular carriers. And normally, like, priorities, I think 5 through 7 are the prepaid carriers. And so I think it goes something like priority 3 is like your AT&T plan that, like, you're on today. Priority 4 is like a T-Mobile, like an actual T-Mobile branded prepaid. And then normally 5 through 7 are those other carriers. Supposedly with Google, they actually have a contract with T-Mobile, so they sit at that priority 4. So you're not quite as priority as, say, a pay month-to-month T-Mobile customer, but you're not quite as deprioritized under heavy workload as you are on maybe like a Visible or I'll just say Mint again because they still haven't transitioned with the acquisition being so new. But I mean, they were a decent price. I think I'm paying a little bit more than I was for my line on AT&T, but what's nice is I'm no longer paying per day for talk, text, and data in international countries. It's just included. And there are free data only SIMs. So, I, of course, can't put my iPad on it because I didn't splurge for the iPad with cellular. It's Wi-Fi only. But, if I wanted to, or I've got a Surface with work that has cellular built in, I could theoretically put the Surface on the plan for free.
See, I like that because right now I have my base phone, which I think with AT&T Unlimited is $55 plus taxes. We'll put that out there.
I think I'm
at
at 65.
Yeah, well, and then I have my iPad. That throws another 25 plus taxes. Double that, my wife and I. Boom, our bill's cranking up. Now we have watches. Now, I never activated my watch on there, and I know on Google Fi from our conversations, they're not doing watches yet, but I would assume at some point they will. And I've never wanted to just pay. I mean, having it on my watch is awesome. If I'm out running or at the gym, in theory, if I had everything on my watch, I have my headphones with my mic, I wouldn't need anything. won't carry all of my music that I would like, so I'll still have my phone. But in theory, hey, I walk the dog, I go for a run, I don't think about it, and boom, somebody calls me. I hit my watch, I'm in my ears, life is good. But to me, that wasn't worth $10 a month. And folks that I know that have done it typically sound something like, oh, we're in IT and we had to pilot this for the company, so we got them for free and I love it. I'll never go back. And I'm like, well, I'm cheap, $10 a month. I don't know. Maybe I'll bump up one of my streaming platforms before I go there. So yeah, definitely Google Fi is an awesome thing going out there. And I'm curious to see how coverage works because they're riding the T-Mobile networks, aren't they?
Yeah. So,
Essentially.
well, I'll say a couple things first. Number one, I do know one or two people. They are tech, but of their own volition, they're using cellular on their Apple Watch. It's kind of like you said. It's mainly so if they decide to go for a run, they don't have to bring their phone with them. They can put their AirPods in, they can stream their Apple Music or Spotify over cellular, and they can just go and still take calls. Or God forbid their phone dies in an emergency. I considered it, of course, on my old plan, but like you said, I didn't want to pay the extra. And now, if anyone from Google is listening here, please, address visual voicemail and Apple Watch support, because there's really kind of three negatives with Google, at least with iPhone. It's still technically in beta, though it's been in beta for like 5 years now. So number one, like you said, they don't support Apple Watches yet because there's differences in how eSIM works with Apple Watch versus a traditional device. Number two, there's a couple settings you have to configure in to get your data and your SMS working. Just like you have to go into the iPhone settings app and put some 2 or 3 URLs and server names because it doesn't auto configure it. And then number three is just there's no built-in visual voicemail. So I did lose the capability to actually just view voicemails from the built-in phone app on my iPhone. That being said, Google has kind of addressed that. They do have their separate Google Fi app, which you can look at your billing and set alerts for your data usage and stuff. And that's where it presents your voicemails with transcription. So it's nice that it's somewhat there. I do wish it were built into the stock iPhone app for calls, but at least it's in a third-party app rather than not having it at all.
So does that mean you get indicators for voicemail on your phone, or no, you have to use the app to watch for your phone? Like you'll see a missed call?
I do. It just comes in as a third-party notification instead of showing the phone app, and I have to launch that other app.
But you show a missed call, and then it hits voicemail, so you've missed the call still, and then you check your voicemail app?
Exactly. And I actually, interestingly enough, it does suck that it's in a separate app, but it seems like so far I'm only on day 2 or 3 of service, but it seems like the transcription is actually faster than the built-in iPhones. Like I'll get the voicemail notification faster, and it'll actually on my lock screen or notification screen give me a preview of the text from the voicemail, the first 5 or 10 seconds, whatever fits on the notification widget.
Well, it's just frustrating because we all know this whole transcription of voicemails and whatnot. We're just locking all of our data into the Apple cloud, and Apple wants to maintain that. And now Google is crying about probably getting access to that. And in reality, I will bet anything they're housing all of that data on their side now. They're listening to what we're saying. They're doing the same things that Apple and all these other devices have done, and they're bringing it into Google Cloud, which is an amazing entry point into your claims about Google here.
Oh, yes.
You said something about you saw a lawsuit on Google saying that, hey, guess what? They've been using our data, huh?
Yeah, go figure. A lawsuit claims Google has supposedly been secretly stealing everything ever created and shared on the internet by hundreds of millions of Americans to train its Bard AI. So go figure, that just goes back to what's the saying? If the product is free, you are the product.
Right, exactly. And then I love how they try to sue one another or claim. Like, I haven't seen the actual talks back and forth, but I guarantee Google's like, look at evil Apple. They're taking all of this data, and that's terrible.
AI, they're stealing everything.
Yeah, exactly. They're doing the same thing. They've been doing it for years. Like they've always said there's this underside evil to Google, and they just kind of skip along under the radar. But now there's the whole anti-unionization. There's problems with the Alphabet company. So
they removed "Don't be evil" from their terms of service or their code of conduct about 2 years ago.
Well, I look at this. I love going back to the Dark Knight, right? It was either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And really, that's true of every tech company. I mean, even Microsoft back in the day, I remember breaking open those DOS, 3.1 disks and just or 2.0 and going up and be like, there's a new version of DOS. This is so awesome. Windows, this is so amazing. Look at all the things it can do. And I don't need PC tools. I don't need any of these other products. I have Windows. I love it. And 3.1.1 is amazing. 95. And then all of a sudden, it was like antitrust time in the late 90s. And even now, it's just still those murmurs. But everybody forgets when they were cool, hip, and happening. And I know about Windows 10. I said, well, Windows is coming back to being cool, hip, and happening. It was like, here, you pirated us, whatever. Get a legit copy. We'll give it to you, sort of thing. So, yeah, Google's now kind of the evil one. It'll be interesting to see where this whole lawsuit goes out to. It's always interesting, the ripple effects too, because we always see these laws go into practice. And I remember I went to kind of a seminar here on GDPR and whatnot, and it was put on by the FTC. And I think, the FTC did it, and a couple of the EU organizations. And the whole concept was this. They're like, first of all, we have to understand all this privacy law, but then we have to see it litigated. And I think that's the scary thing in the US also, is we look to our data protection and we say we have CCPA in California and every state is passing their own version. It's like, when do we get a federal version of this? We need to stop 50 different derivatives, go federal. But then once you get in there, let's face it, laws are not written by technological people. They're written by politicians who some are not lawyers through think tanks. And so they look at different things. And I'm actually going to bring it into a little bit of DR here. Back when I was part of a cloud provider, we would always fall into this, and it was more GDPR at the time, was who was the controller of the data and who was the processor. And we were sitting here in the middle going, listen, the controller, the processor are not me. I'm DR. They own their data. They maintain their data. They delete their data. If I spin them up, they're still maintaining those roles. It's just running on my gear. I'm not even looking at it. And I know it's a little gray area, but when we started saying, how would this apply to a disaster recovery company? The lawyers were like, the law wasn't really written that way. And it was really, really terrible. And so lawyers were interpreting things as they went, but their comments were always, listen, whatever we interpret this as, we never know until it's litigated. And now we're seeing litigations. And I think that's the scary thing now, is as we have more privacy laws, what is the litigation? And really, man, sometimes these laws are written for trolls, right? They're like, if you find it, Jonah, and you report it, you get the payday on it because we're going to incentivize you to go ahead and find these things. And oh, what an evil empire that can build. So absolutely crazy, crazy data. And where is it? So something that's good, is it going to turn into bad? Is it going to cripple business? It just goes down to even beyond DR, folks. It's all about governance in there. Where's your data? Who's controlling it? Who's looking at it? How are they accessing it? Are you documenting it? Do you have your workflows? And that's a lot of things like with my company, Different Dev. It's not just Veeam. It's not just clicking it, but it's this whole governance thing. It's, where do I write it? Is it encrypted? Is it immutable? Well, isn't that cute? Now go further. Who's accessing it? When you have a customer that goes, I want the right to be deleted and forgotten, do you have to go in those backups and expire them? Here's a great one. I remember this. I spoke to a shipping company and they wanted to do backups. And they were like, well, it's real cute that somebody wants to be forgotten. So somebody puts a whole parcel of something across one of our shipping containers. They bring it in from overseas. It hits the port of Galveston or Freeport, and it starts trickling its way to the trucks and it goes. Well, internal organizations such as the FBI need to know containers in and where they're going. So if somebody's like, no, I want to be forgotten. No, there's no way in the world a shipping logistics company is going to delete them. It's same with financial data. So to a degree, it's a little bit of ridiculousness, this whole right to be forgotten. But I guess people get upset. So whatever. I don't know. But, as we try to forget things, now we're starting to get into governments. I love, in the past couple of years, how many times has the U.S. been like, we're going to pass this bill. Oh, and by the way, we want a backdoor into every single system because we're the government.
That actually brings me into some distinction that I was going to make real quick. Number one, like you talked about, we need a federal privacy law. Like, yes, we do, but equally so, like what the federal government has been trying to pass recently, No. I don't know if you saw this, but back in, I think, April, I don't know what the final verdict on it was, but that stupid Earn It bill or whatever it's called that wanted this the backdoors into all encryption policies, that made it back into Congress.
Oh yeah,
For,
and they don't even
in 4 years.
Yeah, but they don't even know what that means. They're like, oh, yes, the FBI should be able to get into secret devices. And we're like, yeah, like your online banking. Oh, the FBI would never do that. Okay, but like they've never slipped up. It's not like somebody in there couldn't use it. It's not like it couldn't be reverse engineered. It's like,
look at all the stuff Snowden exposed too that they were doing with all the social media snooping. Like, you're telling me they're not going to do that if they have the back door? And yeah, like you said, who's to stop a China or a North Korea or a Russia from finding those backdoors and exposing them? Like Asus recently had a big thing because they had a backdoor into all of their BIOSes to do firmware updates, and they found it being actively exploited where someone could go into a Windows machine and inject in their own malicious code into the BIOS. And supposedly they could inject it in a way that that even if you wrote new BIOS onto the motherboard, the malware would still be there and be undetectable. But no, the other thing I wanted to mention is, we talked about Google as the kind of becoming the evil empire. Like, let's be clear also, they're not the only evil empire. And so there's kind of two sides to this. Like, there's been a lot of uproar with Reddit and Twitter lately because they're now charging for APIs that developers used to be able to use for cheap or free, and they're charging quite a bit. And I think some of it's I know Reddit's been trying to IPO. Twitter's got all of its stuff going on. So I'm sure some of it is to do with trying to get some extra profit. But they do claim that they're charging for their API in part because AI softwares like ChatGPT, OpenAI, Bard have been crawling their servers and their pages using those APIs. But I mean, who knows which side of it is. And, I find it interesting that you brought up the Microsoft antitrust, because guess who's going in through antitrust right now in the UK and Europe because of they're trying to acquire another game studio, Activision Blizzard. And there's all these antitrust decisions going on in the EU about it because of exclusivity deals for Xbox and PC versus PlayStation. And I think the most recent on it is I think the decision was getting appealed, but both sides have asked for a 2-month pause before they resume court rulings on it.
Well, you didn't live through the browser wars, and I think that's where Microsoft initially came out, was the browser wars, and they locked in the market of, you want my software, you'll play with me. And back when we had all these Dell PCs and we had machines and everything, gateways and stores, it really was Microsoft strong-arming everybody. So it's interesting because now they're just trying to lock into the market and acquire, which they've always done. I mean, Microsoft has so many companies, and you're right. It's not just Google. These guys aren't really evil empires. They're just doing business like anybody else would. Left unchecked, where do they go? Everyone out there is doing the same sorts of things. And that's kind of where I was going earlier, where Google would be like, oh, look at Apple being bad. And it's like, hey, you're just as guilty, man. So stop. But,
and speaking of Apple and antitrust, they're also, maybe they're through it now, but they were going through some antitrust in Europe too, because essentially it sounds like might be making a decision where they're saying Apple has to open up and allow third-party app stores onto the iPhone potentially.
I'm all for that. But, back in the day, the Android stores, when I would try to do it, yeah, they had open, but they were such buggy software. The Apple store, and former Apple employee contractor here, when we were out there selling it, we're like, we have quality control. We're going to make sure that software works with our standardized hardware. Because that's the whole thing. Everybody rallied on Apple for years because they're like, oh, they only have these hardware configs. And it was like, well, if we only have 3 derivatives and we write our software to those derivatives, we have a great QC process. And that's what brought the quality. If we start bringing third-party apps in, and, there's all those kind of like Cydias and different ones that were like jailbroken ones, they were always garbage apps because they didn't maintain the quality in there. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens, what it does. But I was going to go back to the encryption, and I think we need to have a little bit of a show on this. Is, the supercomputing sounds so absolutely amazing, but as we look at quantum computing is really what I should say, quantum computing, as we apply it over to, supercomputing, that would be like Superman 3 when Richard Pryor gets sucked into the machine and becomes a cyborg. But that's a whole other movie and Superman 4 that didn't happen that should have. But the one that was released, well, we like it because I can say, my uncle was an editor over there. So family shout out there. But it totally could have been more cool. Quantum computing. I mean, these calculations happen in moments. And what people don't realize is there goes encryption the moment we have these quantum computers. Like, what are we going to do to protect a 256-bit encryption? We're like, oh, it's like 212 years. They're like, oh, watch this quantum computing. And we'll get into what that is at a later episode. But it's like, oh, look, it took 4 minutes. And you're like, oh, my God, the world will just be opened up to a new dark age, if you will. And speaking of all of these lovely things, you want to lead into your Chinese intelligence segment here, because we've talked about encryption. We've talked about lawsuits and whatnot. What's going on with Chinese intelligence? They've been up to no good.
I'll get there in a second.
Thank you for joining us on this insightful journey through the latest developments in the tech world on Rebel Devs. In part 1 of our 2-part series, we've only scratched the surface of some incredibly intriguing topics. Make sure to stay tuned for our upcoming episodes where we will delve deeper into the realm of current tech news, keeping you ahead of the curve. But that's not all. We have an exciting lineup planned for you. In future episodes, we'll be diving into the intricacies of creating impactful Grafana dashboards, unraveling the layers of the NIST security framework, and exploring how the Veeam backup framework aligns seamlessly with those NIST principles. Get ready to expand your tech horizons, challenge conventions, and arm yourself with the knowledge you need to thrive in today's dynamic tech landscape. Stay rebellious, stay curious, and keep listening to Rebel Devs. We'll see you next time. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to catch all of our episodes.
Whether you're a seasoned solutionist or just starting out, the Rebel Devs podcast is a must listen. So join us. Comment, share, and subscribe. Be part of the Rebel Devs.